Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We're going back to that horrible world known as the JRC. But before we do, disclaimers. I'll make it short and sweet because I've got a sinus and allergy headache from hell. Trigger warning, we curse on this channel. In the description box, you're going to find a link to the article that the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read. It's written by NeuroClastic, a small non-for-profit started by autistics for autistics, wherein they interviewed and surveyed over 900 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC's so-called behavior modification program. Matter of fact, the JRC doesn't want you to read this article so much, they have threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. NeuroClastic has refused, so you know the drill. Please read that article and share it on all your social media. Also included in there is NeuroClastic's public statement regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as a link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding, folks, in case the JRC actually sees through with their threat. Also included in there, the Ozark's first article in regards to the Agape boarding school, now known as Stone for Help boarding school situation. A so-called Christian-themed boarding school that takes in so-called troubled male teens that has and pending, folks, over 21 civil lawsuits, claims, and allegations leveled against it, all which have been substantiated by the Missouri Department of Social Services, and they include the following: sodomy, rape, sexual assault, child abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, child trafficking, starvation, and that's just for starters. You have one former staff member arrested by the FBI, another a doctor who still lives on the premises, full access of the boys up on multiple substantiated claims of sodomy, rape, and sexual assault of the boys there. You have an attorney general too busy chasing after drag queens and trying and failing to defund public libraries to actually do his job. And I don't even know what to tell you about my governor at this state other than send help. Please read that article. Share it all on your social media. We got the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign, including the link to this bill. Hoya's massive archive on the subject. Jennifer Masumba's behavioral sheet of shockable offenses. A clip out of the 7-hour ordeal undergone by Andre McCollins back in 2002. The templates and the ever-present, self-explanatory, change.org, shut the Judge Rotenberg Center down petition. When we discuss the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, folks, please go ahead and use those headphones, all right? Trigger warning. This channel is marked not for children for a reason. We use profanity and speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, very obviously, parental supervision is very much advised, all right? Okay, so back to where we were, folks. Prior legislative history. This is a new bill. Fiscal implications for state and local governments to be determined. Effective date. This act shall take effect on the 60th day after it shall become a law. Effective immediately, the addition, amendment, and/or repeal of any rule or regulation necessary for the implementation of this act on its effective date are authorized to be made on or before such date. State of New York in Senate, April 29, 2022. Introduced by Senator Brisport, read twice and order printed, and when printed to be to Committee on the Committee on Disabilities. An act to amend the Social Services Law in relation to prohibiting the use of adversive conditioning and other certain punishments. The people of the state of New York, represented in Senate and Assembly, do not enact as follows. Excuse me, folks, allergies. Section 1. The Social Services Law is amended by adding a new section to 498 to read as follows. Adversive conditioning, notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary. No program, agency, or facility that is funded, operated, licensed, or approved by the state or an agency or political subdivision of state shall administer or cause to be administered a vulnerable person any procedure which uses adversive conditioning. No program, agency, or facility that is funded, operated, or licensed or approved by the state or an agency of political subdivision of the state shall use any form of physical contact or punishment that is otherwise prohibited by law or would be prohibited if used on a person who is not vulnerable. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Finally, the dichotomy. If you won't use it on a neurotypical, you shouldn't use it on us. This should be basic common sense. No program, agency, or facility that is funded, operated, licensed, or approved by the state or an agency or political subdivision of the state shall use any procedure or punishment that denies a vulnerable person reasonable sleep, shelter, bedding, bathroom facilities, and any other aspect extended of a humane existence. Any student with an individualized education program that is effective as of the effective date of this section shall be permitted to complete such program, provided that such student is not subjected to aversive conditioning, physical contact, or punishment that is otherwise prohibited by law, or would be prohibited if used on a person who is vulnerable, or any other procedure or punishment that denies a vulnerable person reasonable sleep, shelter, bedding, bathroom facilities, and any other aspect of a humane existence. Provided, however, that no further individual education program shall be funded, operated, licensed, or approved by the state or any agency or political subdivision. Explanation. Matter in italics. Underscored is new. Matter in brackets is old law to be omitted. Okay. If any related program, agency, or facility connected to such an individualized education program engages in any conduct that would otherwise be prohibited by this section, the provisions of this section shall apply regardless of the location of the relevant conduct or residence of impacted persons. Suck it, doctor. Paragraph E of Subdivision 1 of Section 488 of the Social Services Law, as added by Section 1 of Part 8 of the Chapter 501 of the Laws of 2012, is amended to read as follows. Use of aversive conditioning, which shall mean the application of a physical stimulus that is intended to induce pain or discomfort in order to modify or change the behavior of a person receiving services in the absence of a person-specific authorization by the operating, licensing, or certifying state agency pursuant to the governing state agency regulations. Aversive conditioning may include, but is not limited to, the use of physical stimuli such as noxious odors, noxious tastes, blindfolds to withhold of meals, and provision of substitute foods in an unpalatable form. Thank you. This is extremely important, especially for those of us who are autistic with extreme sensory issues. We will choose to starve because the alternative is a type of pain and aversion that neurotypicals, I don't think, can quite wrap their brains around. Movement limitations used as punishment, including but not limited to helmets and mechanical restraint devices, and any procedure which causes obvious signs of physical pain, including but not limited to hitting, pinching, and electric shock. Section 488 of the Social Services Law is amended by adding a new subdivision 17 to read as follows. Program shall mean any residential or non-residential public or private program that provides care, services, programs, and or support to vulnerable persons. This act shall take effect on the 60th day after it shall have become a law. Effective immediately, the addition, amendment, and or repeal of any rule or regulation necessary for the implementation of this act on its effective date are authorized to be made on or before such date. Now we're going to get to the comments, but before we get to the comments, this is pretty straightforward. New York is finally acting because they have to. Our federal government cannot be trusted when it comes to protecting these kids from this awful place. This is the level of corruption. This is the rabbit hole that we're in, folks. These other states cannot trust this place to follow humane common sense. So we're at the point where the states that send people to these places have to make laws so that we don't get sent there. But it's a power move. Almost a rope-a-dope strategy, if you will. JRC has access to unlimited resources and income. This has allowed them to be able to buy their way out of literal federal investigations. The very obvious solution is attack them in their wallet. Because gloves are off, JRC. We're done. But let's get to the comments, shall we? Open legislation is a forum for New York State legislation. All comments are subject to review and community moderation is encouraged. Comments deemed off-topic, commercial, campaign-related, self-promotional, or that contain profanity, hate, or toxic speech, or that the link to sites outside of the New York State.gov domain are not permitted and will not be published. Attempts to intimidate and silence contributors or deliberately deceive the public, including excessive or extraneous posts or coordinated activity, are prohibited and may result in the temporary or permanent banning of the user. Comment moderation is generally performed Monday through Friday by contributing, voting you agreed to the terms of participation, and verify that you are over 13. I read this, folks, so that the JRC can't sit there and cry manipulation again. As of right now, there are no comments, but really it's kind of straightforward, isn't it? New York is not blind. They have found that they can't trust the federal government to protect their disabled citizens time and again. It still took a lot of pushing, folks. But this is where we are now. This place has such a stranglehold over the state of Massachusetts that there is no way to fight them on their own ground. They have corrupted so many officials, organizations, and lobbyists. It's frightening. They have absolute power. Absolute power. New York is fighting back. Andre is fighting back by taking away one of the primary things that have gotten the JRC to get others to overlook their cruelty for so long. I may not live in New York. My stepmom is from there, but I don't live in New York. But I applaud their efforts. I could only hope that somewhere out in Missouri we could have something similar so we can end places like Agape. But you gotta look at what they're doing here. This is brave. The state of New York is coming against one of the most corrupt group of individuals I have ever seen. My hat's off to them. Please share this bill wherever you can. If you know anyone inside New York, please get this to them. But also boost it on a national and international basis because people need to know this place still exists. The fight is far from over. And quite frankly, those of us who've been in the trenches for years, we're done playing. We're going to close on that, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few that we do tend to get removed from time to time. So please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time. And as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea do hope you have a good one. Bye-bye, everyone.